is Xavier Garza, and I am the author and illustrator of the Vincent Ventura Monster Fighter Extraordinaire series, published by Arte Público Press. In this, the sixth installment in the series, Vincent Ventura does battle with the Donkey Lady. He travels to Mexico, to his mother's hometown, to do battle with this evil entity that has plagued his family since before he was even born. One of the reasons that I do this, and I tell them whenever they ask me this question, I always say that these are stories that are like precious gems that are handed down from one generation to the next. I use the example of La Llorona. La Llorona is a very old story, a story that has been around since before I was born, my parents were born, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. This is a story that is so old that during the time of the Aztecs and the Mayans, a version of the story already existed. Now the story changes because it's handed down by way of mouth from one person to the next. But these are not just stories. No, they're a little bit of our heart, a little bit of our culture, a little bit of our traditions. And when we keep these stories alive, what we're really doing is preserving them for future generations. What I hope they take is this concept that I have in my head of telling a story as told through the eyes of a kid. All stories in my books are told through the eyes, through the voice of the main characters, which are usually children or young adults or teenagers. And what I want them to realize that this story, well, it's my story that I'm telling. My story is not that different from their stories or your story. Or we all have cuentos. We all have stories. We all have things that happen to us or to somebody that we know. We have that aunt, uncle, mother, father, grandparent. They keep telling you all these stories. But what I want them to do is to take all these cuentos, to take all these stories, and to write them down. And what you're doing is you're taking a little bit of your heritage, a little bit of who you are, and you're saving it for other generations to enjoy, other generations to love. And so that's what I hope. I hope that my readers, when they read the story, yes, I want them to be entertained, and I want them to have a good time reading the story. But I want them to be maybe a little inspired to share their own stories. Because we all have them. Todos tenemos cuentos, like they say. It's great if you read the books in order because you see different characters get introduced. But if I try to write them in such a way that if you're reading book 2 or you're reading book 3 or book 5, when you read them, I want them to stand alone on their own. I want the characters to be, fresh, to be somebody that when you can pick up book 2 and just start reading it and you can follow along the story. You have a basic concept of what the series is about. But hopefully that'll motivate them. Well, you know what? I read book 3, but you know what? I want to read book 2 and I want to read book 1. Lastly, I would like to encourage all my readers, all readers that, to pick up the Vincent Ventura Monster Fighter Extraordinaire series. In the first book, Vincent Ventura does battle with a blood-sucking chupacabras. His neighbor that has just moved in, he is convinced, can transform like a werewolf into a chupacabras. In the second book, he learns that the girl that's living next door to him now is a witch owl, a bruja that can turn herself into an owl, but not just her. But she is, comes from a long line of descendants of witch owls. In the third book, they help a boy who is being tormented by evil duendes who basically get him in trouble all the time, making it seem like he's the one that's causing problems. In the fourth book, Vincent Ventura and his friends confront the original Cucuy, the biggest, most famous monster of them all. They confront La Llorona, but not one, not two, but 3 different Lloronas, because as they learn the story, there is more than one Llorona. And then in the 5th book, he does battle with the dancing devil when he discovered that his neighbor that has just moved in, a young girl and an older man that's her father, they discover that, she is an amazing dancer, and he is too. But they also discover that he is actually the famous, or infamous, if you will, devil at the dance. And in this latest installment, Vincent Ventura and the Curse of the Donkey Lady. They do battle with this half woman, half donkey witch who preys on children and those that are around her. I am a storyteller. I grew up my whole life surrounded by people that were storytellers. My father, my grandfather, my grandmother, they were all storytellers. Never met my great-grandfather, the original Ventura, but everybody tells me he was an amazing storyteller. So what I always start off is first the story comes first. I tell people the story comes first. Once I have the story down, once I have a concept for the story, then in my head I start to picture all these characters. What do they look like? What should they look like? What should the villains, the monsters, the heroes, how should I depict them? And everything I do, from the stories that I write to the illustrations that I make, it's all meant to tell a story. Because at my core, that's what I am.